It's tube time! Yes, back with more tubes. This time, more Decware even. You may have seen the Decware Taboo review a little while back. One of my favorite things in the world. I like Decware, but this is the CSP3. Sort of a similar layout. Looks probably familiar to the Taboo, but this is, I don't know. It's both a tube line stage or preamp and a OTL headphone amp. So pretty interesting combination, pretty compelling if you're trying to have not too many components in your system and you say, want to have a tube preamp ahead of your power amps for your speakers, but then you also want to be able to power headphones from that same setup. So really sort of compelling option here. And what you have is you got two RCA inputs here. You got one set of RCAs out, and you have, I think this is mono, this is for your sub out, which is super cool. Up front, you can configure this in a number of ways. You can get 2 1/4 inches like this has. You can get, I think, 2 4-pin XLR. You can get one of each. Blah, 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 blah. I think you can get one of these mono if you want. All kinds of fun options there. That'll switches your switches back and forth between your 2 inputs. Then you've got 3 tubes here. So this is your in, and these are your outputs. And these are all 6922 or 6SN7 if you want. And there's actually probably a few other things that would work in there, but those are the 2 I know I've tried. Very interesting to see the 6922 used as an output tube. You often see them as input tubes on preamps, and it's a great tube because there's tons of options out there. And then you've got your 5U4 class rectifier. I love having a tube rectifier because between input, output, and rectifier tubes, you can totally control the sound signature of this thing, and that's really the fun of it. Here you have these little adjusters which basically crank up and down the input left and right channel and the output left and right channel. So in these triodes, if it was unbalanced in any way, you could sort of correct for that a little bit, or if any part of your system sort of had a slight imbalance, you can sort of correct for it a little bit, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and then your volume knob, and Decware lets you choose the base color. This one's in walnut, probably my favorite, but you can get filigree and all kinds of other stuff, and then you can pick some of your knobs and stuff. Anyway, as with the Taboo, as with all Decware stuff, super long waiting list to get it new, so I of course get them all used. But if you do get them used, you get a lifetime warranty, or if you do get them new, you get a lifetime warranty, which is pretty badass. All this is like point-to-point wiring, very nice components, and I can't remember the year, but whenever Decware had its 25th anniversary, they came out with a bunch of different mods you can get, which is a bunch of different like caps and options on the inside that can sort of get greater and greater performance out of it. This one happens to have, what is it, the Anniversary Mod 2 package on it. So some upgraded caps and stuff, capacitors. And I haven't heard another version, so I can't compare, but I can tell you this one sounds fantastic. It is just super black backgrounds, just amazingly quiet. Like, I am accepting of the trade-off with many tube-based amps and preamps and whatnot that, like, if you listen really closely, you're going to hear just a little bit of noise. You're going to hear just a little bit of transformer noise or just a little bit of tube noise. Of course, you can dial that in often with better tubes and whatnot, but like I'm sort of accepting of that. But here, I just, it's not a compromise. It's just so whisper quiet. Obviously, you could put some noisy tubes in there and and change that if you were missing a little bit of that. And it's very transparent. I don't feel like I feel like this chassis is trying to enable the tubes. It is just here to let you take advantage of the tubes. It is super transparent. Like, how you configure this set of tubes can radically change the signature coming out the back or coming out the headphone taps. And I thought that's really cool, right? Because when you're getting into tubes, like, a lot of the fun is being able to match to your particular equipment. So if you say, you know, had a DAC that was overly analytical and you wanted to smooth it out, or you had a headphone that was a little flat, you wanted to add a little punch, or you had speakers where like the bass wasn't as full as you wanted, so you wanted to be like, you can really dial a lot of that stuff in with the combination of input, output, and rectifier. As a line stage or a preamp, it's great. Like I said, very quiet. You know, kind of stays out of the way. The tubes are the story. You know, there you go. Really, no complaints there. I mean, as a preamp, no remote or anything, obviously, so you got to get up from your chair to change the volume. So it may not be the best solution for everybody. Obviously, desktop, very nice. But I'll talk a little bit more about it as a headphone. I did listen to some speakers on it, but I listened to it more as a headphone amp. And I'll say that, like, well, I think it really lets the tube shine. If I had to sort of describe the overall signature, sort of, I would say regardless of the combination of tubes, but I mean, there's some inherent traits just to the typology of these tubes that are going to kind of impart. Anyway, I'd say it's got this very natural presentation. It's very fluid. It's like when you take, you know, and I played with a bunch of different headphones on this, and when you move from like a nice Class A balanced solid state amp or a much bigger, much more expensive tube amp over to it, it's immediately like somebody just turned down the lights and everything got a little more chill, a little more relaxed, maybe a little bit more romantic. And you just kind of go, yeah, you're just going to go, ah, and just kind of like sit back in your chair a little bit and sink into the music a little more. It has like an intimacy in the presentation that I really enjoy. Maybe not all the time for everything, but generally, yes. I was like listening to like, you know, Perfect Day by Lou Reed, right? And it's just like he's singing to you. It's just like this intimate presentation that's just like clustered around your head, and the soundstage kind of comes in a bit. It's not a big, broad, super highly separated sort of experience. Like you might get, like, because I do think tubes can do that, right? They can give you that sort of wide, projected, magical 3D thing. And I think if that's what you're after, then like the Taboo is probably more the direction you want to go. This is really a lot sort of sweeter, and it sort of tames maybe a bit more aggressive headphones, and it's sort of, if you're looking for that more romantic listen, I feel like this is where you end up. Yeah, it doesn't really have like that huge, ouch. It doesn't have like that huge, you know, sort of big 3D scale that you might get from other amps, but you just don't care. You're just happy to be there. It's just very nice. It can get a little, like, all right, gripes. It can get a little congested. You know, as an OTL headphone amp, it's not super powerful, so you're not going to get quite as much like slam and impact as you might from other things. There's bass there, and it arrives with some gravitas and sits nicely, but it doesn't come in like fast, and there's not as much like snap as you might look for another headphone amp. So pairing wise, you know, things like I liked it a lot with the HD650. I feel like a lot of the 600 series is a little bit leaner and tighter, and so that with the Romance, this were kind of a very sweet fit. Actually listened to the Utopias on this, which is like, you know, you're thinking about a headphone at that price range, amp at this price range, you're like, I think it doesn't get everything that the Utopias have to offer from it, but it's a nice pairing. It sounded really good. And the thing about the Utopias is they are notoriously good for picking up transformer hum. Like even on an amp that is dead silent with any other headphone, the Utopias will just find it and show it to you, and you're like, ugh. But since it's OTL, you know, you don't have that issue, and so that's pretty cool. It's not going to be a great match for like big demanding planar headphones. It just doesn't have the drive to really answer those demands. But yeah, if you like a dynamic headphone, if you like one that's you know, decently sensitive, which is a ton of things. I think the things I tried on here were a Grado RS2E. I mentioned the HD650, the Utopias. What else was I playing with? ZMF Atticus. Just a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different stuff, and it kind of sounded great with everything. The things like ZMF that are maybe a little more sort of sweet to begin with. I don't know if that's the right word, but have a little bit of warmth inherently to themselves, a little bit of body. Maybe it was a little, a little too muchness, but I don't know. I still really enjoyed it. It's like, if you want to be analytical and critical about it, there's definitely holes to poke. But if you want to just listen to awesome music and have it sound kind of sweet and magical, then, there are no holes to poke. Tube rolling is, as I mentioned, kind of the fun of the whole thing. And the 6922 family and the neighboring 6S and 7s offer you so many great tubes to choose from. The stock set that comes with it is good. Like the first time you hear it, you're like, it's good. I don't think Steve would just choose crap tubes and like ruin the experience of his great amp. But I definitely, if you own this, you owe it to yourself to upgrade the tubes, because there's a lot more to be realized out of this amp. Even something as simple as going to the Electro Harmonix 6922. These are non-expensive tubes for the output. Gave me a lot more bandwidth. The stock tubes, that congested issue and the sort of getting kind of overly rich and overwhelmed by mid-tone and bass, that was well managed by these. But my favorite output was actually using the 6S and 7. These are some joint Army Navy. I don't remember what kind of exactly year these guys are, but these are some nice Kinrads, and not super expensive, not super spendy. Because you got to buy a pair, and you need to use an adapter. So this is a 6S and 7 to 6922. These kind of managed some of that when using it. A lot of this stuff is really more about when you're using it as a headphone amp. When you're using it as a line stage, it's not as critical because you're not trying to push as much power out of it. So I guess anyway. But I really liked this tube family. I tried a couple. I tried some RCAs. These Kinrads are a little bit nicer. And in the Taboo, I think I might have talked about how I really liked the same tube type in the input. For here, I actually, with those guys as the output, I ended up liking a Tungsram. Tungsram. Anyway, ended up really liking this guy. Just kind of had a good synergy. I describe this tube as like pretty nice separation, very clean, and so they just kind of work together. The rectifier as well. I ended up liking this Sophie Electronic. This is a 2749B, which is, I guess in theory, not quite as durable as the 5U4s. But it was a really nice pairing. It gave a little bit more air and separation in this application. I think there's like I like the when I was talking about this with the Taboo, I think the JJ was my like budget recommendation because it's like $20 and it like tightens up. So again, just there's a lot to play with here in terms of what you're gonna get out of this package. So fun times. Anyway, yeah, tubes are great. Decware's fun. This is a nice kind of combo amp and preamp deal, which is kind of a unique little package that's pretty helpful. Actually, I tried running the when I was testing as far as off of speaker amps, I was using this as my preamp for that, and there was some fun combinations of like getting a little like sort of warmth and increased lower mids from this with sort of the punch and aggressiveness you'd get from the properly matched speaker amp. So there's another fun use for this guy. Anyway, I think I'm just sort of gushing at this point, so I'll stop. Like I said, it's not perfect for everything. Can't run really demanding headphones off of it. It can get a little congested and overwhelmed. You're not getting a ton of space and separation. But if you're interested in sort of maybe taming a slightly sharper, more analytical headphone and bringing a little sweetness into it, if you want to listen with dim lights at the end of the day and have a nice beverage and just feel good about humanity, then I don't know, check it out. That's okay. you know, subscribe and stuff. Signcraft, signing out.